All right, back at it. So we were talking about art and
creativity.
Creativity, back at it. Welcome to the AM. I'm your host, Juliana, and I'm here with Andrew Preston, who's going to be talking a little bit about your upcoming albums, your new projects, all kinds of things like that. So let's start off with, I want to hear a little bit about your new album with the House Cats.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. So the House Cats started as a sort of an offshoot of the Wood Sheep when we had the other band, and Denise and I wanted to do a little bit of folk music still while my main thing, I wanted to do a lot more than just that. But that's sort of her inspiration, is just old time simple acoustic folk music, which is a really powerful thing anyway. And so I said, well, let's form the House Cats, and I don't even remember how we got the name now. Someone named us, but I don't remember who. That's offensive. But so we did an album. We did it in our living room. We hadn't planned on it, but then quarantine. But it made for a really useful time to sit and do that. So it's finished. It's out. So.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to ask you about, because, where would you guys have typically recorded something like that?
I've done a lot at the Traditional Music Center on campus. And then I have done a lot of recording myself over the years, but I've sort of got spoiled with a lot of university equipment. And it's easy to just say, hey, can I just pay you to do this? But I'm glad that we ended up doing it sort of DIY, because that's what I'm doing with my other stuff as well now. So it was sort of a nice little break into that, I guess.
Yeah. So, I imagine that recording in the living room gives the album an entire different feel.
Probably, yeah. I prefer it. I like the every now and then, so quietly you can hear a passing car. And there's something about that ambiance that I think really, it speaks to folk music for one thing, because that's just the style. It's supposed to be folksy and authentic, and I've really been interested forever in sort of just that punk music idea of do it yourself, of that really independent way of doing things. And I like the sound it gives. I like the grit. I like the noise. So it really has a lot of that, which I'm really happy about. Yeah, no,
I especially like that idea of letting the natural elements of something that isn't planned come into the creative process.
One of my favorite bands, they're called Coco Rosie, and they have an album where they recorded it in a barn, and it's cool because if you listen really, really carefully, you can occasionally hear an animal. And it's completely unrelated to the songs, but I like that it feels so real. And I'm not huge on live performance, honestly. I prefer to record. I like the quiet solitude of being in a studio or being behind a microphone. But it gives you a little bit of that live feeling.
So when it comes to is there a big difference for you? You just said there was with live versus studio, but when it comes to writing music, do you write for live or write for studio?
I've always written for studio up until I started playing live regularly. And I like that. I like production. And I didn't realize that I liked that. All of my favorite albums, I think that's a great song. But then when I really listen to it now, having a bit more experience, it's the production that I love. I love the way that you pan certain sounds to get an effect. Just last night we were recording for the new project, and we had this twangy guitar lick, and we panned one in one ear and one in the other ear, and it was just the perfect subtlety. And I just love those little subtle qualities like that, and you can't do that live as effectively unless you have a really great production team, which you gotta be pretty big for that. But I love the lush instruments. I love big theatrical sounds. And even when you have a really small folk project like the House Cats, there's just something about being behind the control of a microphone that lets you bring out those subtleties that I'm a nervous person, and so live I'm too nervous to think about those things. I just want to put out a good performance, and so I like the control of the studio.
Yeah. I think I remember having a conversation with you about that topic, about like producing an album. Because so not too long ago you put together that really long album.
Yeah.
And wasn't that like for you something that was less produced than what you were doing before?
Yeah, and it was hard to do that because I just don't like that much. and as I was doing it, the more I did it was called Old Time Pigeon, and it turned out really well. And it's really clean recording, which I also don't like, but it does justice to the style of music. It's 26 old time traditional public domain, like true folk songs. And you know, as I was doing it, the more I was doing it, the less creative I felt. And I could break those limitations, and I would find myself saying, I really want like a piano in this part with like a weird drum thing or something. But that was breaking my own rule of like, I want a simple, clean album. And some of that slipped through because why not? But I wanted to really stick with it and put out a tribute to that kind of recording, that kind of music, that really simple. And in finishing it, I'm happy with it, but I'm really happy to like move on with the new project and have just those big, even more complicated, strange productions than ever before. So
yeah. So do you see, is that the direction you plan on taking AP Harbor?
Yeah, absolutely. It's before I was in school, I did a lot of home recording, and I wrote exclusively for myself. I didn't put them out anywhere really. I had no intentions of doing it professionally. And so I could be as weird as I wanted and not worry about it. So I wrote strange songs about cats, which I did later release. And then, you know, I have a song called about the amygdala, which is a part of the brain that regulates emotion. And, you know, you just have these topics that you don't typically hear in popular music. But it was nice having the freedom of just not caring about that. And then once you do it regularly, there's a little bit of tension there of is this going to be weird for people? Like if I play this live, like are people in this bar going to be uncomfortable if I sing about this part of the brain or something? You know, it's awkward. And as a nervous person, I was like, I think that I'm going to write some more tame things. And so I ended up tweaking some of the things that I wish that I hadn't. So AP Harbor is taking my entire discography since 2006, reproducing it in its original unfiltered way.
Oh, wow. Okay.
In a series of albums. So the first one is a remix of all the Woodcheap discography that I wrote, completely unfiltered. It's a lot rockier. There's a lot of electric guitar. There's some Jared Davis is doing a string quartet piece. It's just huge production. And I like that it's got the grit. I'm doing it in my living room, which is actually giving it more texture.
Yeah.
That I really liked. And it's losing some of that folk quality, but it's still there in the way that I originally wrote it. So that's sort of the goal of the project. And moving forward, that's what I'll be focusing on primarily. So for me, it's much more fulfilling to just be able to like unfiltered throw this stuff out there. And fortunately, we have a little bit of a following now from the Woodcheap, so I feel less tense about singing my weird cat songs. There's a market for everything.
Yeah, well, I think the cat songs were a hit. I mean, everybody loved the left cat. And the music video was fantastic, too.
That's not something I expected, to be honest. And I should, because, like, the whole, you know, the internet loves cats. But it's more than just that. I thought, you know, people want love songs and folk songs and bluegrass songs, which are all great. Yeah. But this is just not me. Yeah. And I don't like the filter. So that's what's most creative about it for me is just doing anything. We have a song, it's like 18 seconds long, about felt, just the texture of felt. And like, no one's going to relate to that probably, but someone might, and I do. And so, you know, it's cool to just be able to do it. And you know, I don't care.
No, I think that's fantastic. I'm looking forward to listening to it and hearing about it. So when it comes to these topics, I mean, how do you go through the process of, like, what inspires you to write about, like, that part of the brain or that texture? How do you get to that point?
They're all so different. Some things, a lot of the, like, more personal songs, which I like to write from the perspective of other people, even if it's about me. I like the storytelling of that. But some of those ones that are at least rooted in a little bit of truth take a lot longer for me to write. You know, I'll spend like a year messing with lyrics. I really like literary elements, so I try to make sure that everything could at least stand alone as a poem if it didn't have music. That's important to me, that it lyrically, and a lot of people don't like dense vocabulary in lyrics because it is a bit isolating sometimes. And I'm not saying like write the dictionary necessarily, although that would be a cool idea too. But I don't like feeling the need to simplify. I want if a complex idea requires complex vocabulary, I'll write it for that, and that takes a long time. On the other hand, some things like the Felt song or the Amygdala song, I'll think that's a fun topic, and it just happens. The melody will just pop up, and then you do it, and I don't see a need to expand on it. If it's an 18-second ditty, then I'll let it be. But I guess it just depends. I mean, they come and go. But I think everything is inspiration. I think if, like the dripping of that faucet, if that's what produces a beat and a tempo, then why not write about that faucet? Why does it need to be translated to something more important than that?
Yeah.
I think there's an importance to all mundane things. Some of my favorite songwriters, like Regina Spektor and John Prine, write about the most irreverent, ridiculous things.
Yeah.
Regina has a song about pickles. It's called Reading Time with Pickle. And it's a really moving song. And I think that the ability to turn those mundane things into something evocative is the point of art. Yeah.
No, I definitely can see that. So when it comes to so you created a separation, talked about the felt, for example, or for some more technical topics. So when it's more of your fun topics, is it something that you get the lyrics in your head and you write it down, or is it more it's an improv thing? Maybe you're hearing the faucet or you're hearing something and you just kind of sing and you're hearing the lyrics in your head.
I guess it starts that way most of the time. But I do write everything down. If I can't see it in front of me, it won't feel complete to me. I'm like a list maker. I've got to have a list. I have a folder on my computer called Scraps, and it's just one-liners and weird fragments and these creepy melodies that I've hummed at 3 a.m. and saved. Because down the road, there's a place for that, maybe. Yeah. So I like to keep all of that. And sometimes they just stand alone, even though they're tiny and ridiculous. So it starts as improv, but even the little 18-second felt song, I gotta flesh it out, or it feels incomplete to me. I'm a control freak. I'm just now realizing during this.
I think a lot of people are learning a lot about themselves through this period of time.
Yeah, that's for sure. and that's a whole other creative topic of.
Yeah, for sure.
Forced rest.
Forced rest, and also the feelings of isolation and lack of social contact just coming to the forefront of every day. I mean, has that impacted your music any?
Absolutely. Well, and part of that this year for my career was supposed to be my break year. We stopped touring this year with the Wood Sheep to focus on creativity completely and abandoning that idea of we've got to keep playing. Didn't expect it to be this way, but it was kind of a slap in the face of wow, you're really prioritizing things that aren't making you happy and that aren't fulfilling. So being isolated, I feel like a teenager again, living in Vanlier with nowhere to go, nothing to do. The only thing to do is write songs, which I think is how a lot of artists start, out of boredom and forced introspection from just nothing else to do. I think that's why so much good music comes out of this area, or even in really big cities where introspective people, introverted people are surrounded by a lot of people, and looking inwardly is sort of how they, find peace, I guess.
Yeah.
At least that's how I'm thinking about it. But yeah, it's kind of sped up the project of, being at home and having nothing else to think about.
Oh yeah, I'd say so.
So, just kind of thankful for that part. Maybe would like it to be less horrible way of experiencing that for everyone, but
well, you also had, at least you kind of had it set up in a way, because you did take time to plan off. It just kind of...
Yeah, it was convenient for me. I feel lucky that, that it worked out that way. Like I said, I wish it was a better circumstance, but trying to make lemonade out of lemons, I guess.
Oh, yeah. So another thing I wanted to ask you about was, I don't remember where I heard this or if it was a Facebook post that you made, but long before I ever thought of ever like really doing a podcast, when I was just, probably a year or so ago, I was like, if I ever did a podcast, what would I do it about? And who would I talk to? And around that time, I remember either reading something that either you posted or somebody told me about you being inspired by some dreams. And I love that concept. I think that's really interesting. I know that a lot of other people get inspired by dreams that they have. And so that was, I knew I would want to interview you for this podcast because of that, even way back when. So I definitely want to ask you about that.
I'm glad that posting my dreams, was effective for someone.
Yeah.
No one wants to hear about other people's dreams ever. Except apparently you do.
Yeah,
but...
I think it's highly fascinating.
Well, I love scientists who study dreams are notorious for saying, it's so boring to listen to these people's dreams. Because they're usually so personal. Mm-hmm. And, the really subtle qualities of those dreams are just not interesting to anyone else. But they feel really emotional in that dream.
Yeah.
And that is exactly why they make perfect songs. It's the same thing. You take something that is so trivial and ridiculous, and you place that, it's like impressionism, you put that meaning on it, just that feeling, even if it's you might be hearing this string of words that you don't quite understand what that means, but it's making you feel a certain way.
Yeah,
that's what dreams do. We don't necessarily understand what's happening when we look back at it, but when we're having that dream, we feel something. And that's what I find inspiring about dreams. I also have freakishly detailed, strange dreams, and I'm glad that I do. They're rarely scary, so that's good. But they're also usually so strange that even I can't find a way to coherently write a song about them. But I like to take pieces from it. I think that we're pretty lucky to have dreams just give us these really creative images and ideas that we wouldn't otherwise think of.
Yeah, for sure. I know that I've been inspired by dreams that I've had, or if I'm really thinking about a photograph that I'm wanting to make or how I want to make it, I'll dream about it. And sometimes that either gives me closure or gives me answers.
So you'll dream about it before?
Sometimes, yeah.
Yeah.
So my process is speaking about natural elements playing into things, I'll have general ideas of what I want to do for a photograph, and I'm speaking more of my artistic. I do self-portraiture, but that's a whole thing, so I don't really consider it self-portraiture. But anyway, I'll go out into the woods and I'll have an idea. Maybe it's an angle or a specific pose or something, and I use slow shutter to distort it, and I just have to keep, I have a shutter remote and I just keep doing the picture and keep moving, and I'll just take hundreds and hundreds of frames of that, not knowing exactly what I'm going for, but there could be something that nature itself will throw something in there, maybe a beam of light hits in just the right way, but I didn't plan for that. And so it's I dream about the beginnings of that.
So you're using dreams as a catalyst to your ideas. That's do you find that you're making your photographs dreamy? Is there a visual element that comes from that?
I think so. They're also very with the distortion from the slow shutter. I think it gives them a very surreal feel. I'll have to show you some. I'll show you some of my salt prints after this. There's one where I took recently where my hair is way up here, and it's very surreal because it's abnormal for it to be defying gravity in this way, and so I think it's things like that do add to that kind of surreal dreaminess. Surrealism
in general is just that really inspires me. I like Salvador Dali is one of my favorite artists. Alison Harvard, if you're familiar with her work, she's another really great artist, and she's a model who a lot of her portraits just have this strange surreal element, and it's just really dreamlike. And to me, I find that looking at that and hearing surreal music is just more stimulating. It's more interesting to me, which is that's just something I personally seek out when I'm when I want to engage with art in some way. I need it to like, I want to analyze it and like think about it, and I want it to confuse me. Like the best movies are like those strange experimental films that are like probably kind of trash movies, but like they're so interesting. Mm-hmm. Even the backstory of how they were made is interesting.
No, I agree with that. I like movies that leave me with questions, and I think my photography professor, Robin, she gave a piece of advice in class once that really resonated with me, talking about how art doesn't have to give itself easily. And I really like that.
I like that a lot.
Because that's, I think, from what we're talking about, like with movies or music or photography, poetry, I like things that make me really have to think about what it could mean. And I think that that's one of the qualities about art that I like, is that not all art has to be so, this is what this means. You don't have to tell me exactly what it is. Like, let's figure it out through whatever's going on within it.
Are you familiar with Yoko Ono's work at all?
I don't think so.
So it's strange, and she's sort of gained. I mean, she's famous because of John Lennon, honestly. I mean, so but she's a brilliant artist in my opinion, and she gets mocked like so harshly for her performance art. There's a video of her screaming into a microphone at this museum, and she's making these noises, just really guttural screaming for like around 2 minutes or something like that, and everyone claps afterwards, and everybody makes fun of it, and they're like, this is ridiculous. And it is ridiculous, and I think she's probably aware that it's ridiculous, but the point is the way it's presented and the concept of it. I find really interesting. I think that I mean, imagine being there and watching that. That in and of itself is a really surreal experience, and you don't have that experience very often.
Oh yeah.
And that's part of the art of it. It's like that banana taped to the wall that happened a while back. Like that's like, yeah, it's ridiculous. I mean, I'm sure they thought it was ridiculous, but when you think about it, it's not so ridiculous that someone can tape a banana to a wall and thousands of people are trying to pay thousands of dollars for it. You know, there's something to be said about that idea of taking absurdity or just these really, really simple things and turning them into such a concept that it's art. It's also like a lot of capitalist stuff in there. I'm not going to talk about that. But.
No, because I mean, you take something out of its place and you put it somewhere it's not supposed to be. I think I mean, like you said, it can have a really profound impact on people. Even something as simple as a banana on a wall. It's like, well, it's normally not on a wall, and it gives you this like maybe seemingly simple, but it gives you this kind of questioning.
Yeah, it's unsettling. Yeah. It's and you know, it's kind of what you were saying about you know, because people describe these things as weird, and you know, but that's Bianca Cassidy or Sierra Cassidy, one of the sisters. They're both songwriters. Okay,
so you mentioned the girl screaming.
Yeah, Yoko Ono,
okay.
Yeah. And
that reminds me of, there's this band who, oddly enough, I think he records in his house. He's called, I'm going to butcher this name, but I think it's David Maxim Mekic.
Okay.
He's like a progressive metal artist. And there's this song called Smile, where the lyrics are this girl, and she just starts off in this deep, guttural, like, I don't know if you listen to any death metal. I do. But it's not like, this is going to sound odd, but it's not like the clean, pretty death metal. It's like just like this guttural, visceral sound that's like, it almost hurts. And I think it's things like that really, it pushes art, because it's like, well, what is music? Like, because some people strive to be like this perfect, you gotta have this perfect tone, and you gotta hit all the notes, and you gotta, you know what I'm saying? But then he takes this, and it's just such an odd experience to abstract away from like that idea.
Yeah, I mean, music is just organized noise. And if you record something, you've organized it. I mean, you have field recorders who just capture nature sounds for samples, and to me, that's still the definition of music. I mean, birds make music; they don't do it in the same way that we do.
Yeah.
But I don't like imposing really strict definitions of music. There are certain. I was just reading about how this digital distribution platform will reject certain submissions for albums if it's like noise art because it's not music. But I just wholeheartedly disagree with that. I think that that's really a boring and closed-minded way of thinking about sound. And I mean, you wouldn't like, no one looks at abstract art and says that's, I mean, I guess they do say that's not art, but it's called abstract art for a reason. I mean, it's in the name. Mm-hmm. It's the same for music. I think it's, we're just closed-minded. Speaking of which,
I was hoping, because I know I forgot to put her up. I was hoping she would just be good.
There's nothing more musical to me than the meow of a cat. Have like 17 songs featuring cats meowing.
Do you have actual meows in the...
Yeah.
Oh, wait. No, you do. I remember you... I mean, does the love cat have actual meows in it?
It has meowing on a digital piano meowing.
Yeah.
But I have, like, there's a song, the very first song I ever wrote was when I was like a young child. It was called Cats, Cats, Cats. Mm-hmm. And it's this little 40-second ragtime piano song. And every pause in the song, my cat Charles would meow. And we recorded it.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and it's a cool song. Do
you still have that?
Yeah, it's on Spotify or something.
I'll have to listen to it because I haven't heard that
thought
one.
about it in a long time. But
So how old were you when you recorded that?
12-ish, something like that.
And you were living in Van Leer's?
Well, Paintsville, but it's all one place. Really. So,
how did you get started in music at such a young age?
I don't have a musical family per se. My family likes music. My mom listens to a lot of death metal. And my grandma is like an 80s pop queen. She loves 80s pop. And I really loved video games growing up. So video game soundtracks are really a big thing in my music. I love digital noise and synthesizers. And swing music, a lot of old Nintendo songs are swing music done in 8-bit styles. Huh. And I think that I use a lot of that in my music, but that's probably how I got started, is just listening to Nintendo soundtracks and 80s pop with my grandma. I think that's why I like big productions, because of ABBA from the 70s and their big theatrical sounds. But I had a little pump organ that actually Anna filmed in one of our Old Time Pigeon videos. I still have it, and it's really old. It was my great grandma's, and it was in her attic, and I taught myself how to play Christmas songs on it.
Oh, wow.
And then years later, my grandpa got me a guitar, and I never really got into it until I got a ukulele because it was a lot easier. And then I picked up the guitar and then the keys. And I don't care about specializing in one instrument. I never have. But I like to be able to diddle around on a lot of them. Mm-hmm. So it was kind of nice being kind of an introverted kid, because I would just mess around with them and taught myself. And then college, refined it. So. And
did you major in traditional music at college?
I did. I have a degree in psychology, and then I stayed and got a second one in traditional music. So.
Okay, I probably knew, but I didn't recall the psychology. That's interesting.
Yeah, that was what I did alongside all the older recordings, because I didn't anticipate actually doing music professionally, and I think that also influenced it a lot. Psychology's cool. It's.
Talking about your brain song.
Yeah, it's but it not even just the topics themselves. I'm not into dream interpretation per se, mm-hmm. but I love the way that it makes you think critically. You're trained to think very critically, mm-hmm. and that changed the way that I interpret a lot of music. I've always been an AP English guy. I love analyzing stupid poems, and I don't think there's a lot of merit in it sometimes, but I think it's a really beautiful way to go about reading poetry or looking at art, is really just tearing it apart and looking at every single line. And some people say, well, they probably did not mean for you to look that closely at it. And that's probably true, but I would, as an artist, I would love if someone would attach a meaning to something I didn't mean for it to be. I think we add to the art. But psychology just teaches you that. It trains you to think about it that way.
No, that's what I was going to ask you, if you felt that it was like if it had to have that meaning for everybody, or if you were more of the belief that it was this subjective experience of interacting with the art itself.
For me, as an artist, an art piece does not feel complete unless it gives me the meaning that I conceptualized. Like, if I listen to my own song and it isn't striking whatever subtlety that I wanted it to have, then it's not complete. But if it feels complete to me and someone else finds some completely unrelated thing in it, that's even more powerful to me, because at that point it's like transcended this medium, and it means something for other people. And like I'll be the first one to say I'm like a really self-indulgent artist. I don't make art for other people. I completely do it as like this weird self-soothing thing. But I really love like the bonus of being able to relate with others on it, and like have conversations like this about what ideas they're getting from the ideas that I had. You know, makes you look at it in a different way. It's a whole new song.
Yeah.
If you listen to it in a different way. So yeah, I guess so.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to be said about being in like a creative environment with other people, and like having all of that, and you could call it energy or whatever you want to call it, but just like having that creative atmosphere with a group of people, I think is really fascinating. And you can come up with a lot of unique things. And I think even if you're like crossing mediums, like I feel inspired by things that aren't photography. Like I'll listen to music and get ideas for photography, or I'll feel inspired by a feeling that a song gave me.
Yeah.
And think about it photographically.
Well, do you ever hear, like, if you're looking at something you want to photograph, does it have a sound to you? Not in like a, what's that disorder? It's not like in a synesthesia way, but like if I'm listening to music, like it's very visual. Is it the same for
me?
Yeah. I mean, is the opposite true?
No, I think that like when I'm listening to music, I definitely do get visuals. I just think sometimes it transcends like just kind of visualizing the lyrics. Like there'll be certain like snippets of lyrics in a song, like maybe just like one little line that just hits me in this really weird way, and I can't stop thinking about it. And it's like that little feeling that I get from that lyric is what I think about when I photograph.
Yeah, those one-liners, like,
they can get you.
Yeah, they don't, and the best kind of songwriting, in my opinion, is when you like hear this song and it's just beautifully metaphorical, and you're like, I have no idea what this means, but it's making me feel. And then like somewhere in the middle or like near the end, you hear that one line and you're like, oh, and then it's just this moment of like it completely, that one line just ties everything together.
Yeah. And
then you go back and listen to it, and it's a completely different experience. Like that is genius songwriting.
That is, yeah, I was just about to say that kind of writing, even when you do it in things that aren't just songs, like stories, when you can write this whole thing, but once you get it, you get that one-liner or the conclusion that just makes your brain follow this order and put everything together. It's just, I mean, pure craftsmanship. It's just really gorgeous. And
I'm convinced that some people just have the ability to not like plan for that. You know, John Prine was a phenomenal writer in that he could just do that, but he does it so flawlessly. I just can't imagine that he could possibly plan such beauty. Maybe he did, but
well, I mean, kind of that ties back into like things that you don't expect to happen. It's like the trusting in the creative process to provide those external factors that contribute, like the little mark from like when I did the uneven coating of the sanitizer, like that little mark could make the entire piece. Yeah. And that's what I love about it, is it's almost this partnership with the world. Yeah, it is. It is such a spiritual feeling. And that is just the best part of it to me. That's why I say I'm self-indulgent, because I like collaborating, but when I'm doing my own work, it's more of it's looking inwardly, but it's also just like being at peace with surroundings and like letting it be part of it. Yeah. And that's why I like noise so much in recordings. Like it makes it sometimes. Those little mistakes, or those little... The car. The cat. I love the car. The car is just this swell. It's not even a car anymore. Once it's recorded, it's no longer a car. It's an auditory swell that just gives this energy, this momentum to an otherwise dead recording. How could you not like the grit of home recording for that reason? It's stunning. Well, I haven't listened to the whole House Cats album yet, but I'm definitely gonna listen to it. I've listened to 2 of the songs so far. I was listening to it a little bit before you got here.
Oh, okay.
So I'm definitely gonna listen for that.
It's in there. And it's funny because, talking about collaboration, Denise, my House Cats partner, is not as much like that at all. She likes really clean sound, which is also beautiful. I mean, who doesn't like really clean soundtracks and vocals? But the blend of that has been really interesting. In the past, I've always worked with people who are similar to me in that they want like that weird, gritty, abstract noise. But, it's a cool fusion to work with someone who is not like that at all.
Yeah.
So it's a whole other thing. But
yeah, I could definitely see where that would be. Because, I mean, you like 2 similar things, you're going to get a very similar sound. But then if you press yourself to like work with people who are opposites, you can get this really cool.
Yeah, the House Cat sound is not anything like what I've done previously. And even in folk music, it's just a different experience. Mm-hmm. And it's so different from AP Harbor that it feels like I'm like just a completely different person when I'm doing that sort of thing. I approach it in a different way. I record it in a different way. I edit it in a different way. I even market it in a different way. I mean, it's just, which it sounds obvious, but it just feels so different.
Yeah. So, what's upcoming for AP Harbor?
So we're doing the first album of many planned of like reinstating this discography is it's called What a Circle Is Worth, which it comes from a Kate McGarrigle song, Come a Long Way. And I loved that line. That was one of those one-liners when I heard it. And the whole album is Wood Sheep songs, but it's so much more than that. It's a really personal album. It's compacting my 4 years with the Wood Sheep into this record, and that line encompasses the whole album for me of really circling back to my roots, which are ironically unrootsy compared to the roots music I was playing, and it's but that's the first step. But we have several records planned. So,
right. Where can people find you? Like your music, tell like people where you want to be.
APHarbormusic.com has the Wood Sheep. It has my main stuff. It has my solo stuff. It has the House Cats. That's all under there. So APHarbormusic.com.
All right. Well, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me. This was fun.